Hi, this is Andrew Kleiner. Welcome to my final project presentation. This presentation is an examination of Island Beach State Park and sea level rise. Picture there is one of the dunes on the beach side of Island Beach State Park. Last spring, when I was down there, I took that photograph. Island Beach State Park is a 10.1 mile long barrier island located off of the coast of New Jersey. On one side of the island is the brackish waters of Barnegat Bay, and on the other side are the salty waters of the Atlantic Ocean. The ocean side of the island has a lot of dune ecosystems, while there are varied ecosystems on the brackish facing side of the island. In total, there are 9 unique ecosystems on the island that will vary based on where they're located and the elevation at which they're located. It's important to note that slight alterations in topography will result in different species composition in each one of these ecosystems due to encounters with the saltwater spray from the ocean. The way I approached the examination of Island Beach State Park for this project was to use Landsat imagery to analyze change, use ArcGIS to understand how much had changed, what that change was, and then to perform Google Scholar and Web of Science searches to identify sources to find out the future of Island Beach State Park, what it looks like, what it is, what it's going to be, and help me perform the analysis to understand how at risk Island Beach State Park is, what the future of Island Beach State Park looks like, and what might happen there next. On this map I created using ArcGIS, you can see Island Beach State Park as the pale green island located in the water. It is important to note here that the pinkish and red colors on this map show where development is. And you can see that there's only a slight bit of development on Island Beach State Park, and that is a like beach house, welcome house, place where people park, place where a lot of seabirds like to make nests, actually. It's a very beautiful part of the park. That said, you can see that the majority of the area from this map is not developed. And it's not developed because it's been preserved largely since the 1950s and has been without disturbance for hundreds of years. It's one of the very few places on the coast of New Jersey like this. Taking a look at the health of the vegetation on Island Beach State Park, you can see on this image that the majority of the island is red. It's pretty bright red. It's pretty healthy. And there's a lot of healthy vegetation on the mainland there, which can help you when you analyze this map I made in ArcGIS understand like the level of health of the vegetation. That's the point of using those bands. So what we're looking at here is healthy vegetation on the island. Of note, in the research out there is the presence of invasive species, which this imagery can't differentiate. That in some cases, as research has borne out, that invasive sedges actually helped hold the dunes down better during Hurricane Sandy and during high event erosion type causing storms, which is important to note given that we're going to be examining climate change towards the end of this presentation and what that might mean for the island. So as coastal storms increase, as they're projected to increase due to climate change, we can understand that there may actually be a benefit to some invasive species on the island. But after considering the species and the vegetation health where we're at, let's take a look at the story of Island Beach State Park as it stands over the last 2 decades. Here's a Landsat 7 image clipped and turned into a map on ArcGIS that shows what the island looked like in 2001, specifically on October 30th. You can see areas of development. You can see the barrier island. Now let's take a look at what it looks like almost 20 years later. 20 years later doesn't look that different. We would need a better analysis than one can do with the eye. So luckily I have that analysis. Thank you, ArcGIS, and you'll see that slide next. Again, you can see the island, you can see development, you can see the mainland. You're getting a sense of what this area looks like now. You can see that there hasn't been large structural changes to either the island or the mainland in 20 years. And I want to emphasize that point. It's important to know that part of the island didn't disappear or part of the mainland didn't break off. There has been no large-scale changes in the time period, and we think back to that image of the vegetation on both the mainland and the island that shows that it's healthy, given that there has been no large, environmental changes in this time period. That sort of vegetation health tracks. So let's take a look at the changes during this time period. In this image of analysis created with ArcGIS, the yellow is the areas that haven't changed. The red is the areas that have. The majority of the vegetative area has changed. There's a lot of reasons for that. But we can see, and it's important to note that despite the change, if we remember the map that showed the health of the vegetation, that even though it's changing, it's still healthy, and that there is no visible, per the Landsat images, no visible structural changes to the island or to the mainland. So what we're looking at here is really an area that's very similar for about 20 years, with changes that are noted in vegetation, some development expansion, but nothing huge, nothing large scale, nothing massive. But again, still in flux. It's an area that does change. So what does that portend for the future? What does that mean with climate change? And in particular, what does that mean for sea level rise? Having a look at this map created by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, you can see our island there is colored largely pink. There's a little bit of yellow on the ocean side. And if you take a look at the legend, that indicates that there's a high coastal vulnerability for the majority of Island Beach State Park, with some lessening towards the ocean side. That's the location of the dunes we've discussed. You can also see that part of the mainland is also highly vulnerable. And on those Landsat images, we would classify those as tidal regions. So we know that Island Beach State Park goes through changes. And now we know that it's very significantly vulnerable to erosion, to increased storms, and it's at risk. This map makes it very clear that it's at risk. So let's see what's coming next. This image shows a chart from a report issued by the New Jersey DEP in 2019, trying to understand the level of sea level rise that is going to come to the state of New Jersey. So let's take a look at the two numbers on the left. What we have there is these are definitely going to, they're forecasted to definitely happen, so that by 2050, there will be a 0.9 to a 2.1 foot raise of sea levels in New Jersey. From there, based on low, moderate, or high, you can see where things may go next, depending on what the total carbon emissions are globally. And there's a scenario on the bottom where on the extreme, the outlying edge, you could see 10 feet of sea level rise. On the other end of this bell curve, if you will, you have 1.3 total feet, which is actually a forecast in range. That would mean, based on those numbers, that emissions have stopped. So what does this mean for Island Beach State Park? From what we understand that it's very threatened, that it's subject to changes, especially with vegetation. And that's the thing we're concerned with in this examination. Those 9 unique ecosystems on the island, given that it is the only state park on the coast of New Jersey, merit preservation. So what does that look like for Island Beach State Park? What this image shows is, it's created by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. It shows the various height, the elevation rather, of Island Beach State Park and some of the mainland. The highest elevations here above sea level are about 3 feet. Okay. Now, when you consider what we just discussed and the projections to come, it becomes very clear that an island that is sensitive and is changing is also now facing a pretty existential threat to its own existence. The majority of Island Beach State Park would be underwater at about 2 feet of sea level rise. And we know that the projections that the DEP have put together say that by 2050, 2 feet of sea level rise is possible. That means within 30 years, a significant amount of this island could be underwater. So what does that tell us? This is a picture of the Atlantic Ocean. I took this one as well. This tells us that what we're looking at right here could be underwater in 20 years. And it's important to know that. There are options being discussed by the Army Corps of Engineers, New Jersey DEP, and the municipalities that are in charge of Island Beach State Park and the barrier island across from it called Long Beach Island, where there is another 2.9 acres of preserved land in a very small park at the north end of the island. But climate change is creating a unique and existential threat for the barrier island, and the park is vulnerable, and it's going to be irreparably changed by even low estimates of sea level rise based on those DEP projections. And understanding the analysis that we did, we also know that there is some development on the mainland that correlates with areas that are threatened to be underwater according to DEP and EPA projections. We were able to use ArcGIS to take a look at where things are, what the land cover use is, and then we look at these other maps and we can see that a very significant amount of this area is now being threatened with inundation by climate change, specifically sea level rise. So I'm going to end this presentation on a personal note. Throughout the course of this semester, the examinations I've been able to complete using ArcGIS have been illuminating to me. They've helped me expand my own considerations about Island Beach State Park. And the reason why I think that's important, and the reason why I worked on it all semester and read all these sources and put these maps together and tried to understand it better, is because this is where I truthfully want to do my life's work. I'm currently applying to PhD programs for next year, and I intend to study the maritime forest at Island Beach State Park. It's one of the 9 ecosystems on the park, and it's the least studied. One of the sources I cite here, Dr. Charbonneau, I've been in touch with, and I've talked to her about her research and what they're working on the island and where things are going and why this is important. And what this research here has told me and has helped me understand going forward is that I want to do research on an island that might not exist in 20 years, might not exist in 30, it might not exist in 40. And that's really serious and significant, because those 9 ecosystems I keep referencing, even the ones that are changing according to our ARC analysis, were first identified in 1958 by a man named Martin, and they were updated in the 70s in a subsequent study out of Rutgers. But by and large, those ecosystems have remained the same. And I want to see what happens next. But what this class has taught me and what this presentation shows is that this area is under threat. Everything's changing. And if I had more time and more money, I'd want to dive down and figure out which plants are the most threatened, I'd like to go and do field sensing and figure out which ones are located closest to the areas that are going to be inundated first. And can protective dunes be created in a way that stabilizes the ecosystem to prevent the sea level rise from washing over the whole island? If the Atlantic rises, what's the differential rate of rise in Barnegat Bay? And how does that impact the settlements and the communities on the mainland? I have a lot of questions. For as many answers as these analyses have provided, they've also opened me up to more questions. So I thank you for listening to my presentation. The image you're seeing here is a picture of the sunset over Barnegat Bay that I took a couple of years ago while I was down there. And it's a place I truly, really, really love. So I hope that you enjoyed my presentation. I look forward to the discussions about it. And here's a list of my sources. Like I mentioned, Dr. Charbonneau is someone I'm very glad to know professionally. And Mr. Martin there in 1958, 1959 has been guiding my work for years now. So thank you all for listening. I look forward to chatting with you all about this more soon. Thank you.